"You married him for love?" Mafia boss asked, then kissed her and burned the wedding photo. The antiseptic sting of industrial cleaner still clung to Olivia Hart's skin, a sharp reminder of the 12-hour shift she had just finished at St. Jude's Memorial Hospital. Her feet throbbed in a rhythm that matched the dull ache behind her eyes. But she did not have the luxury of stopping. She sat in the driver's seat of her aging sedan, stripped off her navy blue scrubs, and pulled on the white button-down shirt and black slacks required for her second job. It was 6 p.m, if she drove fast. Ignoring the speed limits that governed the winding streets of Harbor City, she could make it to the catering hall by 6:30. Her phone buzzed against the center console. The screen lit up with a name that used to make her heart flutter, but now only induced a heavy, sinking sensation in her stomach. "Ethan?" She swiped the screen to unlock it. The message was short, lacking any greeting or affection. "Need 800 transferred to the joint account. Business emergency. Do it now. Love you." Olivia stared at the text. $800. That was nearly everything she would make from tonight's catering gig, plus 2 extra shifts at the hospital. She typed a reply, her thumbs hovering over the keys as she debated how much pushback she could offer without starting a fight she was too exhausted to finish. "I just paid the rent. Ethan, I don't have that much liquidity right now." The response came 3 seconds later. "It is an investment, Liv. I will pay it back double by Friday. Trust me." She let out a breath that shuddered in the cold air of the car. She did trust him, or at least, she kept telling herself she did. That was what marriage was supposed to be. It was a partnership. It was supporting each other when the waves got high. But lately, it felt less like she was supporting a partner and more like she was bailing out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. She transferred the money. By the time she arrived at the catering venue, a sprawling event space downtown, she was already running on fumes. She balanced trays of champagne flutes, navigated around demanding guests who looked through her as if she were made of glass, and cleaned up spills with a smile plastered on her face. She was proud of her work ethic. She had been raised in the foster system, bouncing from house to house, and she had learned early on that the only person who would ever truly take care of Olivia Hart was Olivia Hart. But as she scraped half-eaten salmon into a garbage bin at 1 a.m, a quiet shame burned in her chest. She was working herself to the bone, her hands chapped and her back screaming, to fund the lifestyle of a man who spent his days chasing deals that never seemed to close. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and fatigue. Their apartment was located in a trendy, up-and-coming neighborhood of Harbor City, a place with exposed brick walls and high rents that they could barely afford. Ethan insisted on living here. He said it projected the right image for his clients. Olivia unlocked the door and stepped inside. The television was blaring, the blue light flickering across the living room. Ethan was sprawled on the leather couch, one arm hanging off the side, a half-empty tumbler of amber liquid resting precariously on the floor near his hand. He did not look up when she entered. His eyes were glued to a late-night replay of a boxing match. "Hey," she said softly, toeing off her catering shoes. Her right heel was blistered, the skin raw and red. She winced as she set her feet on the cool hardwood. Ethan grunted. "Hey, babe, you are late." "Cleanup took longer than expected," she said. She walked into the kitchen, noting the stack of takeout containers on the counter. He had ordered sushi again. Expensive sushi. She looked down at her arms. There was a fresh, dark bruise on her forearm where an elderly patient had grabbed her in a moment of confusion earlier that day. It looked painful against her pale skin. She walked into the living room, hoping he might ask about her day, hoping he might notice the limp in her step or the mark on her arm. "Did you do the transfer?" Ethan asked, his eyes never leaving the screen. "Yes," Olivia said. Her voice sounded thin in the large room. "Ethan, I saw a charge on the credit card today. $300 at a lounge on 4th Street. Was that for business?" Ethan finally looked at her. He possessed a boyish, golden charm that had swept her off her feet 4 years ago. He had a smile that could disarm a police officer and eyes that always seemed to be laughing, even now. half drunk and disheveled. He was handsome. He sat up, flashing that smile. It was a networking lunch. Liv, you have to spend money to make money. I told you, I am close to landing a whale. Once this deal goes through, you won't have to work these double shifts anymore. I promise. He stood up and walked over to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. He smelled of expensive scotch and cologne. He kissed her forehead, but it felt perfunctory, like a box being checked. Don't worry so much, he whispered against her hair. You are so pretty when you smile. Don't ruin it with the worrying. He pulled away before she could respond, heading toward the bedroom. I am beating the sheets. Coming in a minute, she said, when the bedroom door clicked shut. Olivia walked over to the bookshelf in the corner. It was cluttered with knickknacks and framed photos. She reached out and picked up a silver frame. It was their wedding photo. They looked so young. Ethan was grinning, his tuxedo crisp, his arm thrown triumphantly around her. Olivia was looking at him with a devotion that made her chest ache to witness now. She remembered that day clearly. She remembered feeling safe. She remembered thinking that she had finally found a home that would not expire, a person who would not send her back when the state checks stopped coming. She traced the edge of the frame with her thumb. The glass was cold. I love him, she whispered to the empty room. She said it like a mantra, a spell to ward off the darkness creeping in at the edges of her mind. She put the photo back on the shelf, exactly where it belonged, and went to wash the smell of old food and hospital disinfectant from her hair. The next day at the hospital, the pace was relentless. Olivia was charting vitals at the nurse's station when a tray of coffee appeared under her nose. Drink, a voice commanded. You look like a walking corpse. Olivia looked up to see Maya, her best friend and fellow nurse, leaning against the counter with a sympathetic grimace. Maya was the only person who knew the truth about how many hours Olivia was actually working. Thanks, Olivia said, taking a grateful sip. Rough night, Maya raised an eyebrow. Another catering gig? Or was Wall Street Ken demanding you play hostess until 3 a.m? He is a finance broker. Maya, Olivia corrected automatically, though her heart wasn't in the defense. And no, just catering. The money is good, Maya sighed, crossing her arms. The money is necessary because your husband treats your joint account like a personal piggy bank. Olivia, look at me. Olivia kept her eyes on the chart in front of her. Are you happy? Maya asked. Her voice was gentle, stripped of its usual sarcasm. The question hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. The sounds of the hospital, the beeping monitors, the squeak of rubber soles on linoleum. The distant intercom pages seemed to fade. Of course I am happy, Olivia said. Her voice wavered, a treacherous crack in the facade. I married him for love. Maya, we are just going through a rough patch. Every marriage has them. Maya didn't look convinced. She reached out and squeezed Olivia's arm. Just be careful. Liv, you are setting yourself on fire to keep him warm. Eventually, you are going to run out of fuel. Olivia pulled her arm away, feeling a sudden, irrational spike of defensiveness. I have patience to see. She walked away, her heart pounding. She hated that Maya was right. She hated that she felt the truth of it in her bones, rattling around like a loose screw. When she got home that evening, the atmosphere in the apartment was different. The heavy, stagnant air of the previous night was gone, replaced by a frantic, electric energy. Ethan was pacing the living room, his phone pressed to his ear, talking a mile a minute. When he saw her, he hung up and practically bounded over to her. Big news, he said, grabbing her hands, huge. Olivia blinked, still adjusting to the shift in mood. Did the deal go through? Better, he said. He let go of her hands and grabbed a sleek black shopping bag from the table. We have been invited to the Sapphire Gala. Olivia stared at him. The Sapphire Gala was one of the most exclusive charity events in Harbor City. Tickets cost thousands of dollars. It was a world of old money, politicians, and power brokers, a world they did not belong to. Ethan, she started, caution creeping into her voice. How? Why? A new client, Ethan said, his eyes shining with manic excitement. He's looking for someone to handle a massive portfolio. He invited us. This is my in. Liv, if I land this guy, We are set for life." He thrust the bag toward her. "Open it." Olivia took the bag. It felt heavy. She reached inside and pulled out a dress. It was a floor-length gown made of midnight blue silk, elegant and understated and undeniably expensive. She looked at the tag, $1,800. "Ethan," she breathed, horror constricting her throat. "We cannot afford this. You asked me for $800 yesterday just to keep the account positive. How did you pay for this?" "I put it on the card," he said dismissively. "It is an investment. Olivia, you have to look the part. You cannot show up to the Sapphire Gala in something from a department store. This client, he is different. Presentation matters. I am working double shifts," she said, her voice trembling. "I am catering weddings on weekends, and you spent nearly $2,000 on a dress for one night? It is not just for one night," he snapped, his smile vanishing. "It is for our future. Why can you never just support me? Why do you always have to be such a drag?" The accusation hit her like a slap. She looked at the dress in her hands, the silk cool and slippery. She was tired of fighting. She was too tired to explain to him that support did not mean blind obedience to recklessness. "Fine," she whispered. "Fine." The Hotel Royal was a palace of marble and gold. The ballroom where the Sapphire Gala was held was vast, lit by crystal chandeliers that hung from the ceiling like frozen fireworks. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh orchids. A live orchestra played softly in the corner, the music drifting over the hum of conversation. Olivia felt like an imposter. The blue silk dress fit her perfectly, hugging her curves and cascading to the floor, but she felt exposed. She clutched her small clutch bag, her knuckles white. Ethan, by contrast, was in his element. He was wearing a tuxedo he had rented, a glass of champagne in his hand, his eyes darting around the room as he scanned for anyone who looked important. "Relax," he hissed in her ear, gripping her elbow a little too tightly. "You look stiff. Smile." "I am smiling," she lied through clenched teeth. "There he is," Ethan said suddenly. He straightened his tie, his whole demeanor shifting into something eager and desperate. "Come on." He pulled her through the crowd. Olivia stumbled slightly in her high heels, forced to keep up with his frantic pace. They navigated through clusters of men in black suits and women dripping in diamonds. Then she saw him, across the room. Standing near a floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the city skyline was a man who seemed to suck the oxygen right out of the space. He was surrounded by 3 other men, all large and imposing, but they looked like children compared to him. He was tall, with broad shoulders that strained the fabric of his impeccably tailored charcoal suit. His hair was dark, swept back from a face that was all hard angles and sharp lines. He wasn't smiling. He was watching the room with a predatory calmness, a king surveying a court he could crush with a snap of his fingers. Olivia stopped walking. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a sudden, violent rhythm that drowned out the orchestra. She knew those eyes. They were dark, almost black, framed by thick lashes. She had seen those eyes look at her with kindness when the rest of the world looked at her with pity. She had seen them flash with rage when neighborhood kids threw rocks at her. Luca, it was impossible. The last time she had seen Luca Marino, he had been a scrawny, angry 18-year-old leaving the foster home with a duffel bag and a promise to burn the world down. That was 12 years ago. Now, he was... This... Ethan pulled her forward, oblivious to her frozen state. "Mr. Marino," Ethan called out, his voice pitching up slightly. The man turned. His gaze landed on Ethan first, dismissive and cool. Then it slid to Olivia. For a second, the mask of indifference cracked. His eyes widened, just a fraction. He went completely still. His gaze swept over her, taking in the blue dress, the way her hair was pinned up, the terrified recognition in her eyes. But he also looked deeper. He seemed to see the dark circles she had carefully covered with concealer, the tension in her shoulders. The way she was leaning away from Ethan, the silence stretched, thick and charged. Ethan didn't notice. He stepped into the circle, extending his hand. "Mr. Marino, so good to see you. I am Ethan Cole. We spoke on the phone about the portfolio management. Luca looked at Ethan's hand for a long moment before taking it. His grip was firm, brief. Mr. Cole, and this, Ethan said, pulling Olivia forward by her waist, his fingers digging into her side, is my wife, Olivia. Luca's jaw tightened, a small muscle feathered in his cheek. He looked at Ethan's hand on Olivia's waist, his eyes narrowing into dangerous slits. His wife, Luca repeated. His voice was low, a deep rumble that vibrated in Olivia's chest. It sounded like gravel and velvet. Yes, isn't she lovely? Ethan beamed, preening as if he were showing off a new car. Olivia, say hello to Mr. Marino. He's the client I was telling you about. Olivia couldn't breathe. Her throat was dry. Hello, she managed to whisper. Hello? Olivia, Luca said. He didn't use her last name. He spoke her name as if it were a secret they shared, a heavy weight on his tongue. Ethan launched into a speech about market trends and diversification, his words spilling out in a nervous torrent. He was trying too hard. It was painful to watch. He was a golden retriever yapping at a wolf, completely unaware that he could be eaten whole. Luca stood perfectly still, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a tumbler of whiskey. He nodded at appropriate intervals, but his attention was not on Ethan. It was on Olivia. Every time Ethan looked away to gesture at the room, Luca's eyes flicked back to her, intense and searching. "Excuse me for a moment," Ethan said suddenly, spotting someone else over Luca's shoulder. "I see the senator. I just need to say a quick hello. Honey, entertain Mr. Marino for a second." Ethan darted away before Olivia could protest, leaving her standing alone in the circle of the wolf. The three men flanking Luca stepped back, giving them an illusion of privacy in the crowded room. Luca took a step closer. He invaded her personal space, his presence overwhelming. He smelled of wood smoke, expensive spice, and something distinctly masculine. It was a scent that triggered a cascade of memories, rainy afternoons, a shared cigarette behind the garage, the feeling of being safe. "You look thin." "Liv," he said quietly. The nickname hit her like a physical blow. No one had called her that in a decade. "And you look..." "Rich," she replied, her voice trembling. He let out a short, humorless huff of laughter. "I did what I had to do." He looked down at her, his dark eyes scanning her face, searching for the girl he had known. "Do you remember me?" he asked. The question was absurd. How could she forget him? He was the boy who had taught her how to throw a punch. He was the boy who had held her hand when they were locked in the basement by a foster father who liked to punish them for noise. He was the only person who had ever made her feel seen. Flashes of their past rushed through her mind, a cramped kitchen, the smell of burnt toast, him wiping a tear from her cheek with a rough thumb. Olivia looked up at him, the fear of his reputation, of the dangerous men surrounding him, faded for a heartbeat. All she saw was Luca. "Of course I remember," she whispered. A subtle warmth rose in the air between them, a forbidden current of energy. Luca's eyes softened, the hard edge melting away to reveal a well of profound sadness and longing. "Good," he said softly, "because I never forgot you." Before she could respond, before she could process the weight of that confession, Ethan reappeared, breathless and flushed. "Sorry about that," Ethan said, sliding his arm back around Olivia's waist. "Senator Reynolds is a talker. So, Mr. Marino, shall we discuss the numbers?" Luca's face instantly hardened into stone. The wall was back up. He looked at Ethan with cold, flat eyes. "Call my office on Monday," Luca said dismissively. He didn't look at Olivia again. He turned on his heel and walked away, his entourage falling into step behind him, cutting a path through the crowd like a shark through water. Olivia watched him go, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She felt dizzy, as if the floor had tilted beneath her feet. "Did you see that?" Ethan asked excitedly, grabbing another glass of champagne from a passing waiter. "He told me to call his office. That is practically a yes. We are going to be rich. Liv." He clinked his glass against her empty hand, oblivious to the fact that his wife was trembling. Olivia stared at the spot where Luca had disappeared, the smell of wood smoke lingering in the air, a ghost haunting the glitter and the gold. The morning sun that filtered through the high windows of the apartment felt aggressive, too bright for the headache pounding behind Olivia's temples. She stood by the kitchen island, clutching a mug of black coffee as if it were an anchor keeping her tethered to the floor. Across from her, Ethan was vibrating with energy, pacing the length of the hardwood floor in his socks, a piece of toast forgotten in his hand. He is going to sign. "Liv," Ethan said, his voice pitching up with a manic sort of glee. "I can feel it. Did you see the way he looked at me? He respects hustle. Marino is old school. He likes a man who isn't afraid to ask for what he wants." Olivia took a sip of coffee, the bitter liquid burning her throat. She remembered exactly how Luca Marino had looked at Ethan. It had not been with respect. It had been with the cold, detached assessment of a butcher eyeing a particularly lean cut of meat. "Ethan," she said, keeping her voice carefully neutral, "do you know who he actually is?" Ethan waved a dismissive hand, crumbs scattering onto the floor. "Of course I do. He's a legitimate businessman now. Construction, waste management, hospitality. He's cleaning up his image. That is why he needs someone like me. Someone with a clean record and a heavy portfolio to wash. I mean, to manage his assets." The slip of the tongue was fast, but Olivia caught it. She set her mug down, the ceramic making a sharp click against the granite counter. "To wash?" she repeated. Ethan stopped pacing. He flashed her that winning, boyish smile, the one that used to make her knees weak but now just made her stomach turn. "Figure of speech, babe, diversify. That is all. Look, the point is, this deal is going to wipe out the credit card debt. It is going to pay off the car. We can finally look at buying a house, a real house, with a yard. Isn't that what you wanted?" It was what she wanted, but not like this. Not funded by money that smelled of blood and fear. "Just be careful," she whispered. "Please." Ethan laughed, walking over to kiss her cheek. He smelled of mint toothpaste and blind ambition. "You worry too much. I have got this under control." 3 hours later, Olivia was back in the sterile white halls of the hospital, the morning's conversation replaying in her mind like a broken record. Her phone buzzed in the pocket of her scrubs. She pulled it out, expecting another demand for money from Ethan or a text from Maya about lunch. It was a number she did not recognize. "Hello?" she answered, stepping into a quiet alcove near the supply closet. "Mrs. Cole," a voice said. It was deep, gravelly, and entirely unfamiliar. "Yes, my employer would like to speak with you. Tonight, 10 o'clock. Olivia's grip tightened on the phone. "Who is this?" "He owns the restaurant, Il Porto, on the waterfront. Come to the back entrance. Come alone." The line went dead before she could ask another question. Olivia stared at the screen, her heart hammering against her ribs. She knew exactly who the employer was. The name Il Porto was whispered about in Harbor City, a place where the pasta was handmade and the back rooms were soundproof. She should not go. She should block the number, go home to her husband, and pretend this shadow world wasn't bleeding into her life. But the memory of Ethan's frantic excitement, the slip about washing money, and the dark, knowing eyes of Luca Marino gnawed at her. She needed to know the truth. Ethan lived in a fantasy world where he was the hero of his own movie. Luca lived in reality. Il Porto was dark when she arrived. The closed sign was flipped in the window, and the chairs were upturned on the tables in the main dining room, looking like the skeletal ribs of a strange beast. Olivia hesitated at the heavy steel door in the alleyway, the smell of salt water and dumpster rot filling the air. Before she could knock, the door swung open. A large man in a suit that strained at the biceps nodded to her. "He's waiting," the man said. Olivia walked past him, stepping into a corridor that smelled of garlic and lemon polish. The man led her not to an office, but to a small, private booth in the corner of the darkened dining room. A single candle flickered on the table, casting long, dancing shadows against the brick walls. Luca was sitting there. He had shed the suit jacket from the gala. He wore a black dress shirt, the top 2 buttons undone, revealing the hollow of his throat. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, exposing forearms corded with muscle and inked with faded tattoos that vanished under the fabric. "Sit," he said. It was not a command. Exactly, but it didn't feel like a request either. Olivia sat. The leather of the booth was cool against her legs. She placed her purse on the table, creating a small barricade between them. "Why am I here, Luca?" she asked. Her voice was stronger than she felt. Luca poured red wine into 2 glasses. He pushed one toward her. He didn't answer immediately. He took a sip of his own wine, his dark eyes studying her face in the candlelight. He looked older than his 30 years. There was a faint, jagged white scar running along his jawline that she hadn't noticed at the gala. It spoke of violence survived. "You look tired." "Liv," he said quietly. "I did not come here for a health assessment," she snapped, though the concern in his voice made her chest ache. "I came because your goon called me. What do you want?" "I want you to know what you are sleeping next to," Luca said. His voice dropped an octave, losing its softness. He reached into the empty seat beside him and pulled out a manila folder. He slid it across the table. "Open it." Olivia hesitated, her hand hovering over the cardboard. Then she flipped it open. It was a financial autopsy. Bank statements, loan agreements, credit reports. She saw numbers that made her head spin. $50,000 owed to a shell company, $20,000 to a casino in Atlantic City. But then she saw her own name. Her breath hitched. There were loans taken out in her name. Credit cards opened with her Social Security number. A second mortgage inquiry on an apartment she didn't even own yet. "He forged my signature," she whispered, the papers trembling in her hands. "He has been bleeding you dry for 2 years, Luca said. He sat back, watching her reaction with a grim expression. "And it isn't just the banks. He owes money to the kind of people who don't send overdue notices. He owes the Greeks. He owes the Russians. And now, he thinks he can borrow from me to pay them off." Olivia felt a wave of nausea rise in her throat. She pushed the folder away as if it were contaminated. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice cracking. "To humiliate me? To show me how stupid I have been? No," Luca said sharply. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. The candle flame reflected in his eyes, making them burn. "I am telling you because you are in danger. Ethan is using you as a shield. He's using your clean record to launder his mess. If he goes down, Liv, you go down with him. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. I didn't know," she protested, tears pricking her eyes. "I swear, I didn't know. I know you didn't," Luca said. His voice softened again, returning to that low, intimate rumble that vibrated in her bones. "I know you. You are the girl who used to share her lunch with the stray cats behind the foster home. You possess a good heart, and he is exploiting it." The injustice of it crashed over her, the double shifts, the blisters on her feet, the constant anxiety about bills. All while Ethan played the big man with money he stole from her future. She covered her face with her hands, a ragged sob escaping her lips. "I tried so hard," she mumbled into her palms. "I just wanted to make it work. I wanted to be a good wife." Luca reached across the table. His hand covered hers, pulling it gently away from her face. His skin was warm, rough with calluses, a stark contrast to Ethan's manicured softness. "Look at me," he commanded gently. Olivia looked up, her vision blurred with tears. "You deserve better than a man who treats your loyalty like a currency," Luca said. "You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be seen." His thumb brushed across her knuckles in a slow, rhythmic stroke. It was a grounding touch, heavy and deliberate. A jolt of electricity shot up her arm, settling in her chest as a confusing, terrified warmth. It felt like standing too close to a fire, dangerous, but the only thing that could chase away the cold. For a moment, the restaurant faded, the debt, the lies, the exhaustion. It all receded, leaving only the dark intensity of his eyes and the heat of his hand on hers. She felt a pull toward him that was older than her marriage, a tether that stretched back to a frightened boy and girl in a kitchen 12 years ago. She pulled her hand back as if she had been burned. "I am married," she said, her voice breathless and frantic. "I am married, Luca. This Whatever this is, we can't. She grabbed her purse, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might bruise her ribs. This is just business. Luca didn't move. He didn't try to reach for her again. He just watched her, his jaw tightening, a muscle feathering in his cheek. He respected the line she had drawn in the sand, but the desire in his eyes was naked and unapologetic. It is business, he agreed, his voice rough. But know this, Olivia, things are going to get worse before they get better. Ethan is desperate, and desperate men do dangerous things. Keep your eyes open, May. I have to go, she whispered. She fled the restaurant, the heavy steel door clanging shut behind her, sealing the warmth inside and leaving her in the cold, salt spray reality of the night. The apartment was quiet when she returned, but the tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. Olivia sat on the couch in the dark, the manila folder's contents burned into her mind. She waited. It was 2 a.m. when the lock clicked. Ethan stumbled in. He didn't turn on the lights. He moved with a heavy, uneven gait, bumping into the hallway table. "Ethan?" Olivia said, flipping on the lamp. The light flooded the room, illuminating him. Olivia gasped. Ethan's shirt, a white designer button-down, was splattered with blood. His lip was split wide open, swollen and purple, and there was a dark, blossoming bruise on his cheekbone. He looked wild, his eyes bloodshot and dilated. Oh my God! Olivia stood up, her nurse's training kicking in automatically despite her anger. What happened? Ethan flinched away from her outstretched hand. "I got jumped," he slurred, wiping at his lip and smearing more blood across his chin. "Outside the bar. Some junkies wanted my wallet. You still have your watch," Olivia noted coldly, looking at the expensive timepiece glinting on his wrist. "And your phone. What kind of muggers leave a $5,000 Rolex? Drop it, Liv," Ethan snapped. He walked past her into the kitchen, grabbing a bottle of vodka from the cabinet. He didn't bother with a glass. He took a long, shuddering pull straight from the bottle. "I know, Ethan," she said. Her voice was steady, deadly calm. Ethan lowered the bottle. He turned slowly to face her. "You know what? I know about the loans. I know about the credit cards you opened in my name. I know you owe money to the Russians." Silence stretched between them, brittle and sharp. Ethan's face changed. The pathetic, injured victim mask fell away, replaced by a sneer of ugly entitlement. "You have been snooping?" he accused. "After everything I do for us? For us!" she cried out, her anger finally boiling over. "You are drowning us. You stole my identity. Ethan, that is a felony." "I did what I had to do," he shouted, slamming the vodka bottle down on the counter. The glass cracked, but didn't break. "You don't understand how this world works. I need capital to make plays. Once the Marino deal closes, I can pay it all back. No one has to know. The Marino deal is not going to close," Olivia yelled back. "He knows. Ethan, he knows you are a fraud. He showed me the papers." Ethan's eyes went wide. You talked to him. You went behind my back to Marino? I went to find out why we are drowning." "You stupid bitch," Ethan roared. He grabbed a heavy crystal tumbler from the drying rack and hurled it across the room. Olivia flinched, ducking instinctively. The glass smashed against the granite countertop inches from her hip, exploding into a shower of glittering shards. Silence followed the crash. Olivia stood frozen, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She looked at the shards on the floor, then up at her husband. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving, his fists clenched. He looked shocked by his own violence, but there was no apology in his eyes, only defensive rage. "You are ruining everything," he hissed. "I am going to bed," Olivia said. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a door slamming shut forever. "Sleep on the couch." She walked to the bedroom and locked the door. She dragged a chair under the handle, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the wood. She didn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to Ethan pace the living room, realizing that the man she had married was a stranger, and a dangerous one at that. 3 days later, the air in Harbor City felt heavy with impending rain. Olivia clocked out of the hospital at 11 at night. Her car was in the shop, another expense they couldn't afford, so she had to walk the 6 blocks to the bus stop. The streets were slick with mist. Olivia walked quickly, her head down, clutching her purse tight against her side. She was exhausted, her body running on caffeine and adrenaline. A black sedan turned the corner slowly. It slowed down as it approached her, cruising along the curb at walking speed. The windows were tinted dark, illegible slabs of glass. Olivia walked faster. The car matched her pace. The passenger window rolled down with a mechanical whir. A man with a thick neck and a shaved head leaned out. He had a toothpick rolling between his teeth. "Hey, nurse!" he called out. His voice was oily. Olivia kept walking, staring straight ahead. "Don't be rude," the man said. "We just want to send a message to your hubby. Tell pretty boy Ethan that the interest rate just went up." Olivia's heart slammed against her throat. She gripped her phone, her thumb hovering over the emergency button. "Tell him he has got 48 hours, the man continued, leering at her. "Or maybe we take payment in kind. You look like you are worth a few grand." Panic clawed at her throat, sharp and acidic. She broke into a run, her sneakers slapping against the wet pavement. The car engine revved. They were going to cut her off. Suddenly, tires screeched from the opposite direction. A sleek gray coupe swerved around the corner, mounting the curb and blocking the sedan's path with aggressive precision. The driver's door of the coupe flew open. Luca stepped out. He didn't look like a businessman tonight. He looked like a weapon. He was wearing a long wool coat that billowed around him like a cape. His tie loosened, his face a mask of cold, terrifying fury. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. He walked toward the sedan with a calm, lethal purpose that was infinitely scarier than screaming. He reached into his coat. The driver of the sedan saw him. He saw the way Luca walked, the look in his eyes, or maybe he recognized the car. Panic flashed across the thug's face. "Drive," the bald man yelled. The sedan threw itself into reverse, tires smoking, and peeled away down the street, disappearing into the night like a cockroach scattering under a light. Olivia stood on the sidewalk, shaking. Her breath came in ragged, painful gasps. The adrenaline crash hit her all at once, making her knees weak. Luca watched the sedan disappear, memorizing the license plate, before turning to her. The lethal mask vanished, replaced by an intensity that stole the air from her lungs. He closed the distance between them in 3 long strides. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. His voice was low and rough, stripped of all pretense. He didn't wait for an answer. He reached out, his hands cupping her elbows to steady her. His grip was firm, possessive. He scanned her face, looking for bruises, for cuts, for any sign that they had touched her. I am okay," she stammered. Her teeth were chattering, though it wasn't that cold. They wanted a message for Ethan. Luca swore in Italian, a harsh, guttural sound. He pulled her closer, his body blocking the wind, blocking the street, blocking the rest of the world. He was a solid wall of heat and strength. "Look at me," he said again, "just like in the restaurant." She looked up. His face was inches from hers. She could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. She could smell the scent of rain, leather, and that faint, expensive cologne. "I told you it would get worse," he murmured, "but I won't let them touch you. Do you hear me? I will burn this whole city to the ground before I let them touch you." The intensity of his promise, the sheer weight of his protection, hit her harder than the fear had. She was a married woman. She was standing on a street corner with a Mafia boss who had just chased away loan sharks. It was wrong. It was dangerous. But God, she felt safe. She felt his thumbs rubbing small circles into the fabric of her coat at her elbows. She felt the heat radiating from his chest. The space between them crackled with a tension so thick it felt like a physical thing, a wire pulled tight enough to snap. "I shouldn't be here with you," she whispered. Her voice was trembling. But she didn't step back. She didn't pull away. Luca's gaze dropped to her lips, lingering there for a heartbeat that lasted an eternity. Then he looked back into her eyes, the desire warring with restraint. "Get in the car." "Olivia," he said, his voice ragged, "I am taking you home." And for the first time in her life, Olivia stopped fighting the current and let herself be swept away. She walked to his car. The interior of the gray coupe was a sanctuary of silence and expensive leather, sealed off from the mist-slicked streets of Harbor City. Olivia sat in the passenger seat, her hands still trembling slightly in her lap. The heater hummed a low, steady note, blowing warm air against her chilled skin, but the cold knot of fear in her stomach refused to dissolve completely. Luca drove with an effortless, predatory grace. His left hand rested casually on the steering wheel, controlling the powerful machine with minimal movement, while his right hand rested on the gear shift. The dashboard lights cast a soft, amber glow across his features, highlighting the sharp line of his jaw and the focused intensity of his gaze. In the confined space, every subtle movement felt amplified. Olivia found herself hyper-aware of him, the way his fingers flexed against the leather of the wheel as he navigated a turn, the scent of rain and wood smoke that radiated from his coat, the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest. "I can walk from the corner," Olivia said, breaking the silence. Her voice sounded thin to her own ears. "You do not have to take me all the way to the door." Luca didn't look at her immediately. He checked the side mirror, his expression unreadable. "I am not dropping you on a corner. Liv," he said. The use of her nickname, spoken with that rough, gravelly timbre, made her breath hitch. "It is not safe. Not with those men out there. They are gone," she argued weakly. "For tonight," he countered. He glanced at her then, his eyes dark and heavy. "You used to be better at accepting help. When we were kids, you would let me carry your books if your bag broke. You would let me steal an extra apple for you from the kitchen." "We are not kids anymore, Luca," she whispered. "And you are not stealing apples." "No," he agreed, his voice dropping. "I am not." He turned onto her street, the familiar row of brownstones looking grim under the yellow wash of the streetlights. He double-parked in front of her building, killing the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. He turned in his seat to face her. The amber light caught the scar on his jaw, a permanent reminder of the violence he had survived and the violence he was capable of. "I remember you wanted to be a doctor," he said softly, shifting the conversation so abruptly it caught her off guard. "Back then, you used to bandage up the stray dogs in the alley. You said you were going to save everyone." "I am a nurse," she said defensively. "I help people." "I know," he said. There was no mockery in his tone, only a quiet admiration that unsettled her more than his anger had. "You did good. Liv, you built a life. You stayed clean." He looked down at her hands, which were clenched together in her lap. His gaze was physical, a weight she could feel pressing against her skin. "I never forgot that," he added. "The girl who wanted to save the world. I just hate seeing the world breaking her back in return." Olivia looked away, staring out the window at the rain beginning to streak the glass. "I made choices. Luca, just like you did." Luca let out a slow breath. He reached for the door handle. "Come on, I'm walking you up." She didn't argue this time. She was too tired, and truth be told, she didn't want the night to end just yet, despite the danger. They walked to the entrance of her building in silence. The vestibule was dimly lit by a flickering fluorescent bulb that buzzed like a trapped insect. Luca stood between her and the street, his body shielding her from the wind, from the dark, from the reality waiting upstairs. "Thank you," she said, clutching her purse. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "For stopping them." Luca looked down at her. He was close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his irises, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. His gaze dropped to her lips, lingering there with a hunger that was raw and undisguised. The air between them grew thick, charged with the electricity of a storm waiting to break. For a second, she thought he would do it. She thought he would bridge the gap, lean down and kiss her, and God help her. She wanted him to. She wanted to know what it felt like to be wanted by a man who saw her, really saw her, not just as an accessory or a bank account, but as a person. But Luca clenched his jaw, a muscle feathered in his cheek as he forced himself to step back. He respected the ring on her finger more than the man who had put it there did. "Lock the door behind you," he said, his voice rough. "And text me if anything happens. Anything at all." He turned and walked back into the rain without looking back, leaving Olivia standing in the flickering light with her heart pounding, a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The apartment was dark when she entered, but the presence of anger was palpable, hanging in the air like stale smoke. Olivia turned on the hallway light. Ethan was standing in the doorway of the kitchen. He wasn't drunk this time, which was somehow worse. He was sober and he was seething. "Where were you?" he demanded. "It was 1 a.m. "My car is in the shop," Olivia said, hanging her coat up with deliberate slowness. "I had to walk." "Don't lie to me," Ethan snapped. He crossed the room in 3 strides, crowding her against the wall. "I saw the car. Olivia. I was watching from the window. That was a gray coupe. That was Marino." Olivia stiffened. She looked up at her husband, seeing the ugly twist of his mouth, the fear masking itself as rage in his eyes. "He gave me a ride," she said steadily. "I was harassed walking to the bus stop. Some men you owe money to, Ethan, threatened me. Luca saw it happen and intervened." Ethan let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. "Oh, how convenient. The big bad wolf just happened to be passing by to save Little Red Riding Hood? You think I am stupid? You are sleeping with him, aren't you?" The accusation was so vile, so far from the truth of who she was, that Olivia felt slapped. "I am not sleeping with him," she said, her voice shaking with suppressed fury. "I am trying to survive the mess you made, Ethan. Those men knew my name. They knew my schedule. They threatened to take payment in kind because you cannot pay your debts." Ethan didn't hear her. He was too lost in his own narrative of victimization. "You are going behind my back. I told you I had it under control. I told you to stay away from him. He is a thug, Olivia, a criminal, and you are letting him drive you home like you are his girlfriend?" He grabbed her wrist. His grip was tight, too tight. His fingers dug into the soft flesh of her arm, grinding against the bone. "You are my wife," he shouted, shaking her arm for emphasis. "You belong to me." The pain was sharp, but the shock was worse. Ethan had been selfish, lazy, and manipulative, but he had never been physical. This was a line crossed. This was the sound of the final pillar of their marriage crumbling into dust. Olivia jerked her arm back with a strength born of adrenaline and revulsion. "Let go of me," she screamed. She ripped herself free, stumbling back. She looked down at her wrist. 4 angry red marks were already blooming on her pale skin, the ghost of his fingers branded there. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with horror. Ethan looked at her wrist, then at his own hand, blinking as if waking from a trance. "Liv, I didn't mean to—" "Get out," she whispered. "Baby, please, I was just— Get out of my face. Ethan, go sleep in the guest room. Do not speak to me." She turned and walked into the bathroom, slamming the door and locking it. She turned on the faucet to drown out the sound of his pleading through the door. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, pale, exhausted, eyes wide with fear, and then at the red marks on her wrist. She realized then that the danger wasn't just outside on the streets. It was right here, in the home she had worked so hard to build. The next day, the hospital break room felt like the only neutral ground left on Earth. Olivia sat at a small round table, stirring a packet of sugar into her coffee until it dissolved completely. Maya sat across from her, eating a yogurt. She watched Olivia with hawk-like intensity. "You are wearing long sleeves," Maya noted. "It is 80 degrees outside. I am cold," Olivia lied, keeping her eyes on her coffee. Maya reached across the table and gently tugged at Olivia's sleeve. Olivia flinched, pulling her arm back, but not before the cuff rode up enough to reveal the bruising on her wrist. Maya went still. Her expression shifted from curiosity to a dangerous, protective calm. "Did he do that?" Maya asked. Her voice was low. "It was an accident," Olivia said automatically, the excuse tasting like ash in her mouth. "We were arguing. He grabbed me. He didn't mean to hurt me. Accidents happen when you trip over a rug, Olivia. Grabbing your wife hard enough to leave bruises is not an accident. That is assault." Olivia covered her face with her hands. "I don't know what to do." Maya, everything is falling apart. The debt, the lies, and now this. Maya softened. She reached out and placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. You have to leave him, you know that, right? I made a vow, Olivia whispered, tears leaking through her fingers. I promised for better or for worse. For better or for worse does not mean for abused and bankrupt, Maya said firmly. Then she paused, her voice changing. You mentioned someone else, that night at the gala. The man you knew from before. Olivia lowered her hands. She looked at Maya, her eyes red-rimmed. He was there last night, Olivia admitted. He saved me from the loan sharks. He drove me home. And I felt safe. Olivia whispered, It sounds crazy. Maya, he is dangerous. He is involved in things. Bad things. But when I am with him, I feel safe in a way that scares me. Maya sat back, studying her friend. Maybe you are scared because it is new. Or maybe you are scared because you are realizing that you have been staying with Ethan not out of love, but out of fear of starting over. The words hit their mark. Olivia looked down at her wedding ring. Was it love? Or was it just the terrifying prospect of being alone again? Of being the foster kid with nowhere to go? 2 days later, Olivia received a text. It wasn't from a number she recognized, but she knew who it was immediately. I have a solution. Meet me at the gym on 4th, noon. She went. She told herself it was because she needed money, because the hospital shifts weren't enough to cover the interest on the loans Ethan had taken out. But deep down, she knew she just wanted to see him. The gym was a brick building in a rougher part of Harbor City, but it had been freshly painted. A sign above the door read, Merino Community Center, inside. The smell of sweat, old leather, and cleaning solution filled the air. The rhythmic thud, thud, thud of gloves hitting heavy bags echoed off the high ceilings. Luca was in the ring. He was sparring with a teenager, a lanky kid who looked about 16. Luca was wearing protective gear, moving with a fluid, disciplined speed. He wasn't going hard, but he wasn't letting the kid win either. He was teaching him. Keep your guard up, Luca said. Blocking a wild swing. You drop your hand, you get hit. Life does not give you free shots. He spotted Olivia standing by the entrance. He called a timeout, patting the kid on the shoulder, and vaulted over the ropes with an ease that made her stomach flip. He walked over to her, wiping sweat from his forehead with a towel. He was wearing a gray t-shirt that clung to his chest, damp with exertion. You came, he said. You said you had a solution, she replied, trying to keep her eyes on his face and not on the way his biceps flexed as he held the towel. I do, he said. He gestured for her to follow him toward a small office at the back of the gym. I need someone to run the admin side of this place, he explained as they walked, scheduling, payroll, managing the scholarship fund. I need someone organized, someone I trust. You want to hire me? Olivia asked, surprised. It pays well, he said, naming a figure that was double what she made at the catering company. Cash, under the table. So Ethan can't touch it. Olivia stopped walking. She looked at him. This is charity, Luca. I don't want your charity. It is not charity, he said, turning to face her. His expression was serious. I need this place to run clean, live, legitimate. I can't have my usual guys running the books. They don't know how to do it without cutting corners. I need you. He took a step closer. And it gives you a place to be, a place that is safe. No one messes with this gym. No one. Olivia hesitated. It was a moral gray area. Working for a Mafia boss, even in his legitimate business, was a slippery slope, but she thought of the bruises on her wrist, the empty bank account, and the terrifying men in the sedan. I can only work evenings, she said, after my shifts at the hospital. That works, he said. Over the next 2 weeks, the gym became her refuge. She saw a different side of Luca there. He wasn't the cold, untouchable boss from the gala. He was a mentor. She watched him joke with the teenagers, ruffling their hair and asking about their grades. She saw him handing out envelopes of cash to single mothers who came in looking for help with rent, waving away their thanks with a gruff embarrassment. He had strict rules. No weapons, no drugs, no gang colors inside the building. It was neutral ground. One evening, Olivia was filing paperwork in the small office through the glass window. She watched Luca teaching a young boy how to wrap his hands. The tenderness in his gesture, the careful way he wound the cloth around the small fingers, made her chest ache. He caught her looking. He held her gaze through the glass, and for a moment, the rest of the world fell away. The attraction she had been fighting wasn't just physical anymore. It was an ache in her soul, a recognition of a kindred spirit who was trying, just like her, to build something good out of a bad hand. The storm hit on a Tuesday. It came out of nowhere, a torrential downpour that lashed against the windows and turned the sky a bruised purple. Olivia was finishing up payroll in the office. Luca was the only other person left in the building. He had sent the kids home early before the weather turned. Thunder cracked, loud enough to shake the floorboards. The lights flickered once, twice, and then died completely. The gym plunged into darkness, save for the eerie red glow of the emergency exit sign above the door and the battery-operated lantern on Luca's desk. "Great," Olivia sighed, leaning back in her chair. The door to the office opened. Luca stepped in, carrying a flashlight. "Power is out on the whole block," he said. He shone the light on her. "You okay?" "I am fine," she said. "Just stuck. I will wait it out with you," he said. He came around the desk and sat on the small, worn leather couch pushed against the wall. The office was tiny. With him in it, it felt microscopic. "Come sit," he said, patting the cushion beside him. "The chair looks uncomfortable." Olivia hesitated, then moved to the couch. She sat down, leaving a careful 6 inches of space between them. The rain hammered against the roof, a relentless drumbeat. The lantern cast long, dancing shadows on the walls. "It is getting cold," Luca noted. He took off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders before she could protest. The heavy fabric was warm from his body and smelled of him. Cedar, rain, and man. "Thank you," she murmured, pulling the lapels tighter around herself. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm. "I never thought I would have this," Luca said suddenly. His voice was low, reflective. "Have what?" "A place like this, a legitimate life. When we were kids, I thought I was going to end up dead or in prison by 25. That was the path. You changed the path," Olivia said softly. "Did I?" He turned to look at her. The red light from the exit sign washed over his face, casting half of it in shadow. "I am still who I am. Live. I still do things you wouldn't approve of." "But you are trying," she said. "That matters." He looked at her, his gaze intense. "What about you? Did you get the life you thought you would have?" Olivia looked down at her hands. "I thought love was enough," she confessed. "I thought if I loved Ethan enough, if I was good enough, I could fix him. I could make a home that was safe." "You cannot fix people." "Live," Luca said gently. "You can only love them, and sometimes loving them means letting them go before they drag you down." He shifted on the couch, his knee brushed against hers. He didn't pull away, neither did she. "I made a promise," she whispered, the old defense rising up, though it felt flimsier than ever. "To a memory," he countered, "not to the man he is now." The air in the room grew heavy, thick with unspoken desire and the weight of their shared history. Luca reached out. His hand landed on her shoulder, warm and heavy through the silk of her blouse. His thumb traced the line of her collarbone, a slow, comforting arc that sent shivers racing down her spine. Olivia turned to face him. They were so close now. She could feel the heat of his breath on her cheek. He leaned in. It wasn't aggressive. It was a question. He was giving her every chance to stop him. Olivia's heart pounded in her ears like a war drum. She found herself leaning in too, drawn by a gravity she couldn't resist. Her eyes fluttered half shut. She wanted this. She wanted to forget the debts, the bruises, the cold apartment, and lose herself in the fire that was Luca Marino. Their lips were a breath apart. She could taste the anticipation. But then, the image of her wedding photo flashed in her mind. Not the man Ethan was now, but the vow she had made, the person she believed herself to be, loyal, steadfast, good. If she crossed this line, She wouldn't be that person anymore. She would be someone else, someone she didn't know. No, she gasped. She jerked back, pressing a hand against his chest. "I can't," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't do this. I won't know who I am if I do this." Luca froze. He didn't push. He didn't get angry. He simply stopped. He looked at her, his eyes dark with unfulfilled longing, but also with a deep, painful understanding. He took a breath, struggling for control, and then nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. His voice was rough, strained. "Okay, Liv." He pulled his hand back. The absence of his touch felt like a physical loss. "I am not Ethan," he said quietly. "I won't take what isn't freely given." He stood up, walking over to the window to look out at the rain, putting distance between them to let the air cool. "But I am not going anywhere," he added, his back to her. "I will be here, waiting, for when you decide what you truly want." Olivia sat on the couch, wrapped in his jacket, shaking. The near kiss hung in the air between them, more powerful than if their lips had actually touched. She knew, with terrifying clarity, that she was in love with him, and she knew that her marriage was a corpse she was dragging around, waiting for the courage to bury it. The shattering of Olivia's fragile routine did not begin with a bang, but with a quiet page over the hospital intercom system. Olivia Hart to the nursing station. Olivia Hart. She was in the middle of checking a saline drip for a patient in room 304. She smoothed her scrubs, offered a tired smile to the elderly woman in the bed, and walked down the hallway. Her shoes squeaked faintly against the linoleum. It was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, usually a quiet time. But the knot of anxiety that had taken up permanent residence in her stomach tightened. Standing at the nurse's station was not her supervisor, but a man she had never seen before. He wore a gray suit that looked like it had been slept in, and his eyes were tired, cynical and sharp. "Mrs. Cole?" he asked. He did not smile. "Yes," Olivia replied, slowing her approach. "I am Detective Miller, Financial Crimes Division. Is there somewhere private we can talk?" The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Olivia led him to the empty break room, her hands shaking as she closed the door. The smell of stale coffee and antiseptic suddenly felt suffocating. "Am I in trouble?" she asked, her voice trembling. Detective Miller sat at the small round table and opened a leather folio. He pulled out a stack of papers. "We are looking into some irregularities regarding a series of shell companies registered in Harbor City," he said, his tone flat and professional. "Specifically, a company called OHC Consulting and another called Hart Ventures. You are listed as the primary signatory on both accounts." Olivia stared at him. "I have never heard of those companies." The detective slid a paper across the table. It was a bank opening document. At the bottom, in blue ink, was her signature. It was a good forgery, but to Olivia, it looked alien. "There have been transfers, Mrs. Cole," the detective continued, "large sums, moving from offshore accounts into these companies and then disappearing into various construction firms and waste management operations. It looks like laundering, and right now, it looks like you are the one holding the mop." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. She reached out and touched the paper. The date on the document was 6 months ago. She had been working a double shift that day. "My husband," she whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "Ethan, he handles our finances. He's a broker." The detective watched her carefully. "We know who your husband is, and we know who he has been trying to do business with, but his name is not on these papers. Mrs. Cole, yours is, if you know something, you need to tell me, now. Because when the feds get involved, and they will, they are not going to ask nicely." "I don't know anything," she said, tears pricking her eyes. "I swear." The detective handed her a card. "Think about it. If you are a victim here, we can help. If you are an accomplice, we will find out." Olivia did not remember driving home. She operated on autopilot, a cold numbness spreading through her limbs. She stopped at the bank on the way, demanding statements she had never seen before. The teller had looked at her with pity as she printed out page after page of evidence, accounts opened in her maiden name, transfers of $10,000, $20,000, $50,000. When she walked into the apartment, it was dark. Ethan was sitting at the dining table, the glow of his laptop illuminating his face. He looked up, smiling, a glass of wine in his hand. "Hey, babe," he said. "You are home early. I was just thinking we could order." Olivia dropped the stack of papers onto the table. They landed with a heavy slap, sliding across the polished wood and scattering over his laptop keyboard. Ethan froze. He looked at the papers, then up at her. His smile faltered, then vanished. "What is this?" he asked, his voice tight. "You tell me," Olivia said. She was shaking, her entire body vibrating with a rage she had never felt before. "The detective came to the hospital today. Ethan, to my job. He asked me about OHC consulting. He asked me about money laundering." Ethan stood up. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a nervous, jagged sound. "A detective? Liv, you are overreacting. It is just some creative accounting. Everyone does it. You use my name," she screamed. The sound tore through her throat. "You forged my signature. You made me a criminal without me even knowing." Ethan's face darkened. He slammed his wine glass down. "I did it for us. You think this apartment pays for itself? You think that dress you wore to the gala fell out of the sky? I needed clean accounts to move the capital. Your record was spotless. It was the only way to get the liquidity we needed to buy in with Marino. I never asked for this," Olivia yelled, backing away from him. "I asked for a partner. I asked for a husband. I didn't ask to be your shield for federal crimes." "You knew what you signed up for," Ethan shouted back, advancing on her. "You knew I was ambitious. You were happy enough to spend the money when things were good. I worked 2 jobs, she cried, tears streaming down her face. "I pay for the groceries. I pay the electric bill. I have never spent a dime of your dirty money." She turned to grab her purse, suddenly desperate to leave, to get away from the stranger standing in her living room. "Where are you going?" Ethan demanded. He grabbed her arm, spinning her around. "You are not leaving. You are not going to talk to anyone else." "Did you tell that detective anything, did you? I told him the truth." Olivia spat, trying to wrench her arm free. "That I didn't know anything." Ethan's face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. "You ungrateful bitch. I am trying to build an empire here, and you are trying to sink me?" He pulled his arm back and punched the wall. His fist connected with the plaster inches from her face. The sound was a sickening crunch. Dust and debris exploded outward, showering Olivia's hair and cheek. A spiderweb of cracks radiated from the hole his fist had left in the pristine white wall. Olivia flinched, a small cry escaping her lips. She stumbled back, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Ethan stood there, breathing heavy, his knuckles bloody. He looked at the hole in the wall, then at her, his eyes wild. "Don't you walk away from me," he growled. Olivia didn't wait. She scrambled backward, fumbling for her phone in her pocket. She ran into the bedroom and slammed the door, locking it with shaking fingers. She shoved the dresser in front of the door, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She pulled out her phone. Her fingers hovered over 911. But if she called the police, they would arrest Ethan, and the detective would see the accounts, and she would be dragged down with him. She needed help. She needed safety. She dialed the only other number she knew. Luca. It rang once. "Olivia?" His voice was sharp. Alert. "I don't feel safe," she whispered, her voice breaking. He punched the wall. I think he's going to hurt me." "Where are you?" The demand was instant. "Icy. The apartment," she sobbed. "Please, I am 2 minutes away. Lock the door. Stay away from him." The line went dead. Olivia huddled in the corner of the bedroom, listening to Ethan pounding on the door. "Open the door. Liv, stop being dramatic. We just need to talk." 2 minutes felt like 2 years. She heard the front door of the apartment crash open. She heard heavy footsteps, not just one pair, but several. "Ethan?" A deep voice boomed. The pounding on the bedroom door stopped. "Marino?" Ethan's voice was high, confused. "What are you doing here? Get out of my house. Sit down." Luca's voice came through the wood, low and lethal. "Before I put you down." There was a scuffle, the sound of a chair dragging, and then silence. "Olivia." Luca called out. His voice was closer now. "Right outside the bedroom door. It is me. Open the door." Olivia pushed the dresser aside and unlocked the door. Luca stood there. He was flanked by two large men she recognized from the gala, but she only saw him. He was wearing a black overcoat, his face set in a mask of controlled fury that was terrifying to behold. He looked at her red-rimmed eyes, the plaster dust in her hair, the way she was trembling. His jaw tightened until the muscle feathering in his cheek looked like a steel cable. "Did he touch you?" Luca asked. The question was soft, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. "No," she whispered. "He hit the wall." Luca looked past her, at the hole in the plaster. He turned his head slowly to look back at the living room, where Ethan was slumped in a chair, guarded by the two men. "You didn't just break a wall, Ethan," Luca said, walking back into the living room. His voice was conversational, which made it infinitely worse. "You broke the rules." Ethan looked small. He looked pathetic. We were arguing. It is a marital dispute. You have no right." "You used her name," Luca interrupted. He picked up one of the bank statements from the floor. "OHC Consulting, you are laundering money through your wife's credit score because you burned your own." "It was smart," Ethan protested weakly. "It kept the heat off. It brought the heat to her doorstep," Luca roared, his composure finally cracking. "A detective visited her at work today." "Do you understand what that means? It means the feds are watching. It means you have put a target on her back, not just from the law, but from every enemy I have who thinks she is the weak link in my chain because of you." He threw the papers at Ethan. "I am taking her," Luca said. "You can't take my wife," Ethan shouted, trying to stand. One of Luca's men pushed him back down with a single hand. "She is coming with me," Luca said, "because if she stays here, she ends up in handcuffs or a hospital bed, and I will not allow either." He turned to Olivia. "Grab a bag, just the essentials. We are leaving." Olivia didn't look at Ethan. She packed a small duffel bag with shaking hands. When she walked out of the bedroom, Luca was waiting. He put a hand on the small of her back, guiding her past her husband. "This isn't over." Ethan spat at them. "You are right," Luca said, not looking back. "It is just starting." The drive to the safe house was a blur of city lights and rain. Olivia sat in the passenger seat of Luca's car, her body still vibrating with the aftershocks of adrenaline. She stared at her hands in her lap. They were shaking uncontrollably. She felt a warmth beside her. Luca reached over and covered her hand with his. His grip was firm. It wasn't a tentative touch. It was an anchor. He laced his fingers through hers, his palm rough and warm against her cold skin. He didn't say anything. He just held on, driving with one hand, steering them through the dark streets of Harbor City. The contact was intensely intimate. It was a claim. It was a promise. Olivia stared at their joined hands, feeling the strength of his grip seeping into her bones, steadying the chaotic rhythm of her heart. They pulled into the underground garage of a sleek high-rise building on the edge of the financial district. Luca led her up to the penthouse floor. The apartment was beautiful but sterile. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline, modern furniture, and no personal touches. It was a fortress, not a home. Luca locked the door behind them. He turned to face her. "You are safe here," he said. "No one knows about this place. Not Ethan, not the police. Just me." Olivia dropped her bag on the floor. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a crushing wave of exhaustion and grief. She looked at Luca, the man she had known as a boy, the criminal she was supposed to fear, the savior she shouldn't want. He looked at me like he hated me, she whispered. Her voice broke. "I gave him 4 years of my life. I gave him everything, and he looked at me like I was the enemy." She started to cry. It wasn't a polite cry. It was a ragged, ugly sobbing that came from the depths of her soul. Her legs gave out. She sank onto the gray sofa, burying her face in her hands. Luca was there in an instant. He didn't stand over her. He didn't offer awkward platitudes. He knelt on the floor in front of her, between her legs, bringing himself down to her level. "Breathe, live," he commanded gently. "Just breathe." He placed his hands on her knees, his thumbs rubbing soothing circles into the denim of her jeans. His presence was overwhelming. The heat of him, the scent of him, the sheer solidity of him. Olivia looked up, gasping for air. Luca's face was inches from hers. His dark eyes were full of a raw, aching tenderness that took her breath away. "I am so stupid," she choked out. "I am so stupid for believing him." "You are not stupid," Luca said firmly. He moved his hands from her knees to cup her face. His thumbs brushed away the tears tracking down her cheeks. "You are loyal. You have a big heart. He used that against you. That is his sin." "Olivia, not yours." He leaned his forehead against hers. She could feel his breath on her skin, warm and steady. "I have got you," he whispered. "I have got you." The physical closeness shifted. The comfort began to bleed into something else, something hotter and more desperate. The air in the room grew thick. Olivia looked into his eyes and saw her own reflection, stripped bare of all the lies she had been telling herself. She realized then that she didn't just feel safe with him. She felt whole. Her breathing slowed, falling into sync with his. Luca's gaze dropped to her mouth. He went still. His hand slid from her face to her waist, pulling her a fraction of an inch closer on the sofa edge. He waited. He gave her the choice. Olivia made it. She didn't pull away. She leaned forward. Her fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, feeling the hard muscle of his chest beneath the cotton. "Please," she whispered. Luca closed the distance. The kiss was slow at first. It was a question asked and answered in silence. His lips were soft, surprisingly gentle for a man who lived by the gun. He tasted of mint and danger. Then, Olivia sighed into his mouth, and the dam broke. The kiss deepened, becoming hungry and frantic. Luca groaned low in his throat, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her flush against him. Olivia clung to him, pouring all her fear, her confusion, and years of buried longing into the contact. She pressed her body against his chest, seeking the solid reality of him. His hands roamed over her back, possessive and reverent. He kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. He kissed her like he had been waiting 12 years to do it. He pulled back, just for a second, his forehead resting against hers, his breath ragged. His eyes searched hers, dark and dilated. "Tell me to stop," he rasped. "Tell me to stop and I will walk out that door." Olivia looked at him. She cupped his face with both hands, feeling the rough stubble on his jaw. She thought of Ethan punching the wall. She thought of the cold, empty bed she had slept in for years. Then she looked at the man kneeling before her, the man who would burn the city down to keep her warm. "Don't stop," she whispered. She pulled him back to her. Later. The room was dim, lit only by the city lights filtering through the sheer curtains. They lay together on the sofa under a thin cashmere blanket Luca had pulled from a closet. It was quiet. The storm of the day had passed, leaving a strange, suspended peace in its wake. Olivia lay with her head resting on Luca's chest. She could hear the steady, strong beat of his heart. His arm was wrapped around her, his fingers tracing slow, abstract patterns on her bare arm. It was a touch of reverence, as if he couldn't quite believe she was there. She looked at the wall opposite them. There was a generic piece of abstract art hanging there, some beige and blue swirls that meant nothing. Her mind drifted to the wedding photo sitting on the shelf in her apartment, the image of her and Ethan, smiling, full of promise. That girl in the photo felt like a stranger now. She felt a twist of guilt in her chest. She was still married, technically, but beneath the guilt was a profound sense of liberation. For the first time in years, she wasn't alone. "You should know," Luca said, his voice rumbling in his chest. "Know what?" she murmured, tracing a button on his shirt. "I have been trying to get out, or at least get the business clean. That is why I approached Ethan. I wanted to move the money into legitimate ventures. Construction, the gyms, restaurants. I wanted a life where I didn't have to look over my shoulder. And Ethan saw a piggy bank," Luca said, his tone hardening slightly. He took the money I gave him to invest and he gambled with it. He paid off his own debts. And when he ran out of my money, he started borrowing from the Russians using your name as collateral because he knew I wouldn't touch him if you were involved. Olivia closed her eyes. He used me to protect himself from you. Luca tightened his arm around her. Yes. And that is why I cannot just walk away. My organization. There are men who are loyal to the old ways. They see Ethan's disrespect as a weakness I need to correct. And the Russians. They want their money. Olivia lifted her head to look at him. In the half-light. His face was beautiful and tragic. I thought I was escaping, she admitted softly, when I married him. I grew up with nothing. Luca, you know that. I wanted stability. I wanted boring. I thought if I married a man like Ethan, I would never have to be afraid again. She let out a dry, humorless laugh. I traded one risk for another. I thought I was running towards safety, but I was just running into a trap. You didn't know, Luca said. No, she agreed. But I know now. She lay her head back down on his chest. The reality of their situation settled over them. She was a witness to financial crimes. Her husband was a fraud. Her lover was a mafia boss trying to go straight. The law was closing in from one side and the criminal underworld from the other. What do we do? She whispered. Luca kissed the top of her head. We fix it, he said. I untangle the money. We deal with the Russians, and we deal with Ethan. And the detective? Luca was silent for a moment. That is the hard part. To get you out of this clean, live. You might have to make a choice that puts you in the line of fire. I am already in the fire. Luca, she said, listening to the beat of his heart. At least here. I'm not burning alone. He held her tighter. No, you are not alone. Not anymore. The silence in the high-rise safe house was not peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating, and charged with static. For 2 days, Olivia had existed in a state of suspended animation, watching the rain streak against the floor-to-ceiling windows while Luca fielded calls in the other room. His voice was always low, a rumble of controlled aggression that vibrated through the walls, but the tension in his shoulders when he walked past her spoke volumes. On the third morning, the fragile bubble burst. Luca stormed into the living room, his phone gripped tight enough to whiten his knuckles. He looked at Olivia, his expression dark and unreadable. He is gone, Luca said flatly. Olivia set down her coffee cup. Who is gone? Ethan, Luca replied. He shook the surveillance detail I put on him. He slipped out the back of the apartment building 3 hours ago, and he is not the only problem. My sources on the street say the Rojas crew has been asking questions. They know about the accounts. Liv, they know your name is on the paperwork. They see you as a loose end, or worse, as leverage to get to me. The walls of the luxurious apartment suddenly felt very close together. Olivia stood up, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. What does that mean? She asked. It means we are locking this place down, Luca said, pacing the length of the room. I have 3 more men coming to cover the lobby and the elevators. You do not leave this floor. You do not go near the windows. I can't just sit here. Luca, Olivia protested, panic rising in her throat. I have nothing, my clothes, my ID. Everything is at the apartment. If I am going to disappear or hide, I need my things. It is too dangerous. Luca snapped. Please, she begged. I need to feel like a person, not a prisoner. I just need 10 minutes to grab a bag. Just 10 minutes. Luca stopped pacing. He looked at her. Seeing the desperation in her eyes, he knew that feeling, the feeling of being trapped in a cage not of your own making. He let out a harsh breath, running a hand through his dark hair. Fine, he conceded, though his jaw remained tight, but you do not go alone. You take Russo. He's my best man. You go in, you grab a bag, and you get out. 10 minutes. Not a second more. The drive back to the apartment felt like a funeral procession. Russo, a mountain of a man with a thick neck and eyes that constantly scanned the mirrors, drove in silence. The rain had turned the streets of Harbor City into slick, gray ribbons. When they arrived, the building looked exactly as she had left it, yet it felt entirely alien. It was a place where a stranger lived. Russo went up first, clearing the hallway with a drawn weapon before nodding for her to follow. "Wait by the door," Olivia whispered. "I will be fast." She entered the apartment. The air was stale, smelling of old takeout and neglect. The hole Ethan had punched in the wall was still there, a jagged wound in the plaster that made her stomach turn. She moved quickly, heading for the bedroom to throw clothes into a duffel bag. On her way back through the living room, she stopped. The bookshelf remained undisturbed. Sitting there, in its silver frame, was the wedding photo. Olivia reached out and picked it up. She stared at the image of her younger self. She looked so happy, so hopeful. She looked at Ethan's winning smile. For years, she had told herself that she loved him, that she was fighting for their marriage because their love was worth saving. But standing in the wreckage of her home, holding the proof of their vows, a devastating truth settled over her like a cold blanket. She hadn't married Ethan because she loved him. She had married him because he was safe. She had married him because he was a finance broker who wore clean suits and promised a life far away from the chaos of the foster system. She had married him to escape the loneliness that had dogged her entire life. "I used him too," she whispered to the empty room. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She wasn't just a victim. She was a participant in the lie. She was about to shove the photo into her bag, intending to destroy it later, when a floorboard creaked behind her. It wasn't Russo. The step was too light, too frantic. Olivia spun around. Ethan stepped out of the shadows of the hallway that led to the guest room. He looked like a ghost of the man in the photo. His designer shirt was wrinkled and stained with sweat. He hadn't shaved in days, and his eyes were wide, rimmed with red, darting around the room with manic energy. "Liv," he breathed. "You came back." Olivia took a step back, clutching the photo frame to her chest like a shield. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" "Lucas said you ran." "I had to," Ethan said, his voice pitching up. He took a step toward her, his hands out in a pleading gesture. "Marino is trying to frame me. Liv, he is trying to steal everything I built. He's trying to steal you." "He's not stealing me," Olivia said, her voice shaking but clear. "I left you. Ethan, I left because you hit the wall. I left because you made me a criminal." No. "That is just what he wants you to think," Ethan said. He was closing the distance now, ignoring the fact that she was retreating. "We can fix this, babe. I have a plan. We can go to the coast. I have some cash stashed away. We just need to leave. Now. Before he comes for us, I am not going anywhere with you," Olivia said. Ethan's face changed. The pleading mask slipped, revealing the ugly, desperate entitlement beneath. "You are my wife," he snapped. "You don't get to decide." He lunged for her. Olivia tried to dodge, but he was too fast. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her bicep with bruising force. He wasn't the polished husband anymore. He was a drowning man trying to pull her under with him. "Let go of me," she screamed. "Rousseau," she shouted toward the door. Ethan clamped a hand over her mouth, dragging her backward. "Shut up! You want to get us killed?" He pulled her toward the front door, his grip shifting from desperate to possessive. The wedding photo fell from her hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud, the glass cracking down the center. Olivia bit his hand. Ethan yelped but didn't let go. He reached into his waistband and pulled out a gun. It was a snub-nosed revolver, small and black. His hand was shaking so badly the barrel wavered in the air. "You think I won't do it?" he hissed in her ear, sweat dripping from his forehead onto her cheek. "You think I am weak? I will show you. I will show everyone." He kicked the front door open, Mao Zahartan dragging Olivia out into the hallway. Russo was there. He had his weapon drawn instantly, aiming at Ethan's head. "Drop it!" Russo roared. "Back off!" Ethan screamed, pressing the barrel of the gun into Olivia's side. "I will shoot her! I swear to God, I will do it!" The hallway was narrow, the air thick with tension. Olivia could feel the cold metal of the gun through her blouse. She could feel Ethan's heart hammering against her back. A frantic, erratic rhythm. "Don't do this!" "Ethan," Russo said, his voice calm and steady, "put the gun down. I am walking out of here with her." Ethan yelled. "And if you try to stop me, she dies." The elevator doors at the end of the hall pinged open. Luca stepped out. He didn't yell. He didn't run. He took in the scene with a terrifying, icy stillness. He saw Ethan. He saw the gun pressed against Olivia's ribs. He saw the terror in her eyes. Luca raised his own weapon. It was a sleek, matte black pistol, and unlike Ethan's, it did not shake. "Let her go," Luca said. Oh, his voice was not loud, but it carried a weight that made the air in the hallway freeze. "Stay back," Ethan shrieked, dragging Olivia further back toward the stairwell. "You ruined everything. Marino. She was mine. She was perfect until you showed up. She was never yours," Luca said, taking a slow, deliberate step forward. "She is not a possession. Ethan, she is a woman, and right now, she's the only thing keeping you alive." "You want her?" Ethan laughed, a jagged, hysterical sound. "Come and get her!" He shifted his grip, trying to get a better hold on Olivia's neck. For a split second, the gun moved away from her ribs as he gestured wildly at Luca. Russo took a step to the left, drawing Ethan's eye. "What are you doing?" Ethan shouted at Russo. "Stay still!" It was the distraction Olivia needed. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She remembered the self-defense class Maya had dragged her to years ago. She remembered the rage that had been building inside her since the moment she saw her name on those bank documents. She lifted her right leg and slammed her heel down onto the arch of Ethan's foot with every ounce of strength she possessed. Ethan howled in pain. His grip on her loosened for a fraction of a second. Olivia twisted her body, wrenching herself out of his hold and dropping to the floor. Luca moved in a blur. Before Ethan could recover, before he could bring the gun back down, Luca was on him. He didn't shoot. He closed the distance and drove his shoulder into Ethan's chest, slamming him against the wall. The revolver skittered across the floor. Luca grabbed Ethan by the collar and the belt, sweeping his legs out from under him. Ethan hit the ground hard. The wind knocked out of him. In one fluid motion, Luca had a knee pressed into Ethan's back, pinning him to the carpet. Russo kicked the revolver away and moved to secure Ethan's hands. Olivia sat on the floor, her back pressed against the opposite wall, gasping for air. Her heart was hammering against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack them. She watched as Luca held Ethan down. Ethan was sobbing now. The bravado was gone. The threat was gone. He was just a man in a dirty shirt crying on the floor of a hallway. The curated image of the successful, charming husband she had married shattered completely, leaving nothing but this pathetic reality. Luca looked up. His eyes found hers. The cold fury vanished, replaced by a desperate, searching concern. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. Olivia shook her head, unable to speak. "Get him out of here!" Luca snarled at Russo. 2 hours later, the city was dark. They were no longer at the high-rise. Luca had decided it was burned. They were at a different, safe location, a small penthouse with a rooftop terrace overlooking the industrial district of Harbor City. The wind was picking up, tugging at the hem of Olivia's sweater. She stood near the edge of the roof, looking out at the sprawling grid of lights below. In her hands, she held the wedding photo. She had picked it up from the floor before they fled the apartment. The glass was gone, and the frame was bent, but the picture remained. She heard the heavy steel door open behind her. Luca walked out onto the terrace. He had shed his jacket and his tie. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the column of his throat. He looked exhausted, the adrenaline crash leaving him hollowed out but steady. He came to stand behind her. He didn't touch her, but she could feel his heat, a solid presence against the chill of the night. "He is in custody," Luca said quietly. "My lawyers are talking to the police. They are handing over the evidence of the fraud. He won't be coming after you again." Olivia nodded. She ran her thumb over the face of the man in the photo. "He looked so small," she whispered. "On the floor. He looked like a child. He was a child," Luca said. "A child playing with fire." He stepped closer. His chest brushed against her back. He looked over her shoulder at the photo in her hands. "Why did you keep it?" he asked. Olivia looked at the smiling faces. "I needed to remember," she said. "Remember what?" "The lie," she answered. Luca was silent for a long moment. Then, he asked the question that had been hanging between them since the moment they met at the gala. His voice was low, rough with a vulnerability he rarely showed. "You married him for love?" he asked. It wasn't an accusation. It was a genuine question, one that demanded a truth she had been hiding even from herself. Olivia closed her eyes. The wind whipped her hair across her face. "No," she whispered. She turned around to face him. The city lights blurred in her vision as tears finally spilled over. "I thought I did," she said, her voice trembling. "But I didn't. I married him because I was tired of being alone. I married him because he felt safe. I married an idea. Luca, I married a promise of a life that wouldn't hurt me." She looked up at him, tears tracking silver lines down her cheeks, and it was all a lie. She finished. Luca looked at her. He saw the guilt, the shame, and the raw honesty in her eyes. He didn't judge her. He understood survival better than anyone. He reached out. His hand cupped her jaw, his thumb brushing away a tear with infinite gentleness. "It is over now," he said. He leaned down. This time, there was no hesitation. He kissed her. It wasn't like the desperate, frantic kiss in the apartment. This was deep, slow and unhurried. It was a kiss of forgiveness. It was a kiss that tasted of promise and apology. It was a claiming, but one that asked for permission with every shift of his lips against hers. Olivia's hands came up to clutch his lapels, pulling him closer. She leaned into him, letting his strength hold her up when her own legs felt weak. She poured the last 4 years of loneliness into the kiss, letting him burn it away. When they pulled apart, they were both breathless. Luca reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver lighter. He flicked the lid open. The flame danced in the wind. Small and bright, he held it out. Olivia looked at the lighter, then at the photo in her hand. She hesitated for only a heartbeat. She held the corner of the photograph to the flame. The paper caught instantly. An orange tongue of fire curled up the edge, consuming the image of the smiling couple. They watched it burn together. The fire ate Ethan's smile first, then Olivia's hopeful eyes. The photo blackened and curled, turning into ash that flaked away in the wind, carried off into the night over the city. Olivia held onto it until the heat pricked her fingers, until the last corner turned to dust. She let it go. She felt a weight lift from her chest, leaving her light and terrified and free. She looked at Luca. The reflection of the dying flame was still in his eyes. "Is it really over?" she asked softly. Luca took her hand, interlacing their fingers. He looked out at the city, his expression hardening. "The marriage is over," he said, "but the danger isn't." He turned back to her, his face serious. "Ethan is talking. Liv, he's trying to cut a deal with the feds. He's telling them everything he knows about my operations to save his own skin. And the Rojas crew, they saw us leave the apartment. They know you are with me." "What does that mean?" she asked, the fear creeping back in. "It means we have to make a choice," Luca said. "The law is building a case. If you testify against Ethan, you implicate yourself in the accounts he opened. You become a witness. It puts you in the crosshairs of the federal government and my enemies. And if I don't, then Ethan might walk," Luca said grimly. "And if he walks, he remains a threat. And the money laundering charges stick to you." He squeezed her hand. "To be free of him, truly free, you have to burn the rest of the bridge. Liv, you have to trust me. But trusting me means stepping into my world, a world that is never entirely safe." Olivia looked at the man standing before her. She saw the scar on his jaw, the gun tucked into his waistband, the darkness that shadowed his eyes. But she also saw the man who had burned a wedding photo with her, the man who had caught her when she fell. She looked out at the city, at the thousands of lights burning in the dark. "I am done running," she said. She squeezed his hand back. "Tell me what we need to do." The conference room at the federal building was cold, air-conditioned to a temperature that felt designed to freeze the resolve out of anyone sitting at the metal table. Olivia sat with her hands clasped tight in her lap, looking from the tired, hawk-like face of Agent Miller to the polished, stony expression of Silas. "Luca's attorney. We need a confession, Mrs. Cole," Agent Miller said, leaning forward. "We have the bank records. Sure. But juries get bored with spreadsheets. We need Ethan on tape admitting that he used your identity to launder money for the Rojas cartel. We need him to implicate the city officials he has been bribing. And we need to know the extent of his involvement with Mr. Marino's organization," Silas interjected, his voice smooth and dismissive. "My client is not sending Mrs. Cole into a room with the Rojas crew. It is a death sentence. We can offer you the financial logs. That should be enough. It is not enough to guarantee immunity for her," Miller shot back. "If she wants to walk away from this without a conspiracy charge hanging over her head, she needs to give us the big fish. She needs to wear a wire." The door to the conference room opened. Luca stood there. He had been pacing in the hallway, barred from the room by procedure, but his patience had evidently run out. He walked in, ignoring the agent's protest, and stood behind Olivia's chair. His hand rested on the back of it. A silent, possessive barrier. "She is not doing it," Luca said. His voice was low, vibrating with a finality that brooked no argument. "Find another way." "There is no other way," Miller said, looking up at Luca with disdain, "unless you want to take the fall for everything. Mr. Marino?" "I will take the fall," Luca said instantly. "Charge me. Leave her out of it." "No," Olivia said. The word hung in the room, quiet but sharp. Olivia stood up. She turned to look at Luca. His dark eyes were filled with a protective fury that made her chest ache, but she shook her head. "I am done being protected." "Luca," she said softly, "I am done being the wife who didn't know. I am done being the victim." She turned back to Agent Miller. "Ethan called me this morning," she said. "He wants to meet. He says he has a way to fix everything. He's meeting with the Rojas head and Councilman Evans at the old shipping yards tonight. He thinks he can sell me to them, my silence for their protection." Miller's eyes widened. "That is the meeting. That is the whole conspiracy in one room. I will do it," Olivia said. "I will wear the wire." "You are not going in there," Luca growled, stepping closer. "I am going," she insisted, looking him dead in the eye. "Because if I don't, this never ends. We will always be looking over our shoulders. I want a future, Luca, a real one, and I am willing to fight for it." The sun had set hours ago, leaving the docks of Harbor City shrouded in a heavy, salt-laden mist. The meeting was set for midnight at an abandoned warehouse near Pier 42, a skeletal structure of rusted corrugated metal that groaned in the wind coming off the water. Luca parked the sedan 2 blocks away, hidden in the shadows of a stack of shipping containers. The engine ticked as it cooled. Inside the car, the silence was thick, heavy with unspoken fear. "Turn around," Luca said. His voice was tight, strained. Olivia shifted in the passenger seat. Luca reached over, his large hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the small microphone taped beneath the collar of her blouse. His fingers brushed the warm skin at the base of her throat, sending a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold. He checked the battery pack taped to her lower back, smoothing her sweater down over it. His touch was clinical, careful, but underlying it was a desperate, terrifying tenderness. He was sending the woman he loved into a lion's den, and it was tearing him apart. He pulled his hands back, resting them on her shoulders. He looked at her, really looked at her, memorizing the curve of her face in the dim light of the dashboard. "If you feel anything wrong, anything at all, you say the phrase," he commanded. His eyes were intense, burning into hers. "You say, 'I want to go home,' and I will come through that door. I don't care about the agent's timeline. I don't care about the evidence. I am right outside. Do you understand?" "I understand," Olivia whispered. She reached up and placed her palms on his cheeks. His stubble was rough against her skin. She saw the fear behind his stoic mask, the fear of a man who had finally found something worth losing, and was terrified that he was about to lose it. She pulled him down to her. The kiss was slow. It wasn't hungry or heated. It was a desperate communion of breath and soul. It was a promise. It was a plea. Their foreheads rested together as they pulled apart, breathing in the scent of each other. Rain, expensive leather, and anxiety. "Come back to me," Luca rasped against her lips. "I will," she promised. She opened the car door and stepped out into the mist. The warehouse smelled of diesel, rust, and old seawater. The only light came from a single industrial work lamp hanging from a chain in the center of the vast, empty space, casting long, swinging shadows against the metal walls. Ethan was waiting by a folding table in the center of the pool of light. He looked worse than he had at the apartment. His eyes were sunken, his movements twitchy and erratic. Standing near him was a man Olivia recognized from mug shots Agent Miller had shown her. Rojas. He was short, thick-set, with a face like a bulldog and eyes that looked dead. Next to him stood Councilman Evans, a man in an expensive suit who was sweating profusely despite the chill, clutching a briefcase like a life preserver. "Liv!" Ethan called out when she stepped into the light. His voice echoed in the cavernous space. "You came. I knew you would come." He rushed forward, trying to hug her. Olivia stiffened, keeping her arms at her sides. He smelled of sour sweat and fear. "Where is the money, Ethan?" she asked clearly, making sure the microphone picked it up. "The money you stole using my identity." Ethan pulled back, blinking. "We are here to fix that, babe. We are here to make a deal. Mr. Rojas here. He's willing to buy the debt. He's willing to wipe the slate clean, for a price." Rojas grunted. His voice was like gravel grinding together. Olivia turned to look at the crime boss. "What is the price?" she asked. "Your husband says you know where Marino keeps his ledger," Rojas said, stepping closer. "He says you have access to the safe house accounts." "I don't," Olivia said, keeping her voice steady. "I never did." "Ethan lied to you." Ethan flinched. "Don't say that. Tell them. Liv. Tell them you know. Why did you forge my signature on the OHC consulting papers?" "Ethan?" Olivia pressed, ignoring his plea. "Why did you launder $200,000 through my name?" Ethan wiped his forehead, looking frantically between Rojas and the councilman. It was just business. I had to move the capital to pay the councilman for the permits." "Permits?" Olivia asked, looking at Evans. "You took bribes to rezone the waterfront for illegal construction?" "Now wait a minute," Evans stammered, holding up a hand. "I didn't know where the money came from. I was told it was a legitimate investment. You knew." Ethan shouted, turning on him. "You asked for cash. You said no paper trails." The air in the warehouse shifted. The confession was out. The wire had caught it all. Rojas looked at Ethan with disgust. "You brought her here to talk." He spat. "She is interrogating us." He looked at Olivia, his eyes narrowing. "She is wired." Panic erupted in Ethan's eyes. He lunged for Olivia. "No, she wouldn't. She is my wife." He grabbed the front of her sweater, ripping the fabric. The black plastic of the wire taped to her chest gleamed under the harsh work light. "You bitch!" Ethan screamed. He struck her. It was a backhanded blow that caught her across the cheekbone, sending her stumbling back into the folding table. The table tipped over with a crash, sending the lamp swinging wildly. "Kill her!" Rojas shouted to his men in the shadows. Ethan grabbed Olivia's arm, hauling her up, using her body as a shield as he fumbled for the gun in his waistband. "You belong to me!" he shrieked. "You don't get to betray me!" Suddenly, the metal doors of the warehouse exploded inward. Federal agents? No, it was Luca. He moved like a storm front, followed by 4 of his men. There was no warning, no demand to surrender. Gunfire erupted instantly, deafening in the enclosed space. "Get down!" Luca roared. Ethan dragged Olivia backward, firing blindly toward the entrance. A bullet sparked off the metal pillar inches from Luca's head, but Luca didn't flinch. He didn't stop moving. He was cutting the angle, moving through the hail of bullets with a singular, terrifying focus. Rojas and his men were returning fire, but they were pinned down. Luca reached the center of the room. He saw Ethan holding Olivia, the gun pressed to her temple. Luca dropped his own weapon. He raised his hands, walking straight toward them into the open. "Stop!" Luca shouted. The command cut through the noise of the firefight. His men stopped firing. Rojas's men hesitated. "Let her go." "Ethan," Luca said. He was breathing hard, his eyes locked on Olivia's terrified face. "This is between you and me. She is mine." Ethan was crying now, hysteria taking over. "You stole her. You poisoned her against me. I didn't steal her," Luca said, taking another step. "She chose." Ethan's hand wavered. The gun moved a fraction of an inch away from Olivia's head. That was all she needed. Olivia didn't wait for Luca to save her. She slammed her elbow back into Ethan's solar plexus. As he doubled over, gasping, she twisted away, dropping to the floor. Ethan raised the gun, aiming not at her, but at Luca. "Die!" Ethan screamed. Olivia scrambled up. She didn't run away. She stepped in between them. She stood directly in the line of fire, her hands raised, her chest heaving. "Stop it, Ethan!" she screamed. Ethan froze. His finger hovered over the trigger. He looked at his wife, the woman he had bullied, manipulated, and underestimated, standing like a wall of steel between him and the man she loved. "Move! Live!" Ethan yelled, his voice cracking. "No," she said. Her voice shook, but she stood her ground. "I am choosing my own life. Ethan, I don't belong to you. I don't belong to anyone, and I am not going to let you kill him." Her words hit him, harder than a bullet. The realization that she was willing to die to protect Luca broke something fundamental inside him. His arm dropped. The gun hung loosely at his side. "You really love him?" he whispered, looking at her with a look of utter defeat. "Yes," she said softly. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder every second. The federal agents were closing in. Rojas cursed and made a run for the back exit, only to be tackled by Luca's men. Ethan looked at the door, then at the gun in his hand, then at Olivia. He dropped the weapon. It clattered on the concrete floor. He sank to his knees, burying his face in his hands as the warehouse doors burst open again, this time filled with men in windbreakers shouting FBI. Luca didn't look at the agents. He stepped around Olivia and wrapped his arms around her. Pulling her into his chest, he buried his face in her neck, holding her so tight she could barely breathe, shaking with the aftershocks of the terror he had just suppressed. "I have got you," he murmured into her hair. "I have got you." The legal fallout was swift and brutal. With the recording from the warehouse, the federal government had everything they needed. Ethan Cole was charged with money laundering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted murder. The evidence implicated Councilman Evans and the Rojas crew, dismantling a significant portion of the city's corruption network. But victory had a price. To protect Olivia from prosecution, Luca had to make a deal of his own. He sat in a room with Agent Miller and laid out the map of his own organization. He gave up the shipping routes used for smuggling. He gave up the contacts for the illegal gambling dens. He agreed to a rigorous dismantling of his criminal enterprises. He walked away a free man, but a much less powerful one. His empire was stripped down to its legitimate bones. The construction firms, the restaurants, the gyms. The streets whispered that Luca Marino had gone soft, that he had given it all up for a woman. He didn't care. 6 weeks later, the Marino Community Center was buzzing with life. The smell of fresh paint had replaced the scent of old sweat. New equipment lined the walls. In the ring, 2 teenagers were sparring, wearing headgear that actually fit, supervised by a coach Luca had hired on salary. Olivia walked through the front doors, carrying 2 coffees. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked different. The dark circles under her eyes were gone, replaced by a glow of health and hard-won peace. She found Luca in the back office. He was on the phone, discussing a contract for a new hotel build downtown. He looked up when she entered, and his face transformed. The hard lines around his mouth softened. The guarded look in his eyes vanished. "I will call you back," he said into the phone, hanging up without waiting for a reply. "Hey," Olivia said, setting the coffee on his desk. "Hey yourself," he replied. He stood up and walked around the desk. He didn't hesitate. He pulled her into his arms, resting his chin on the top of her head. They stood there for a long moment, just breathing, grounding themselves in the simple reality of being together. "I saw the lawyer today," Olivia said against his chest. "The divorce papers are final. Ethan signed the plea deal. He's looking at 15 years. Luca tightened his arms around her. "It is over." "Liv, is it?" she asked, pulling back to look at him. She touched the scar on his jaw. "You gave up a lot. Luca, your reputation, your power, do you miss it? Luca took her hand, interlacing their fingers. He looked out the glass window of the office, at the gym full of kids who had a safe place to go because of him. I miss none of it, he said honestly. I was drowning. Liv. I just didn't know it until you pulled me out. He kissed her palm. Come on, he said. Let's go home. The final scene unfolded in the penthouse apartment. It no longer felt like a fortress or a safe house. It felt like a home. There were plants on the windowsill that Olivia had bought, hardy succulents that didn't need much water. There was a throw blanket on the sofa that was soft and colorful. On the coffee table sat a framed photo of them, taken at the gym's reopening party. They were laughing, really laughing, their heads thrown back, oblivious to the camera. They stood on the balcony, the night breeze of Harbor City lifting Olivia's hair. The city sprawled out below them, a grid of golden light stretching to the dark water of the bay. Luca stood behind her, wrapping his arms loosely around her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder. Olivia leaned back into him, her hands resting over his, feeling the solid, steady beat of his heart against her back. She thought about the fire that had consumed her wedding photo. She thought about the ashes drifting away on the wind. She was scared of the future. She knew that Luca's past would always cast a shadow. She knew that there would be days where the world wasn't kind to them. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't scared of facing it. You know, she whispered into the night air. I think I finally understand. Understand what? Luca murmured, pressing a kiss to the side of her neck. What it means to choose, she said. I didn't fall into this. Luca, I didn't marry you for safety. I am choosing you. Every day. Even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. Luca turned her in his arms so she faced him. The city lights reflected in his dark eyes. No longer cold, but warm and full of a love that had survived the fire. I love you, Liv, he said. It was the first time he had said the words out loud. I love you, she replied. He lowered his head and kissed her. It was a slow, unhurried kiss, a seal on a promise that didn't need to be written down to be true. It was a kiss that tasted of freedom, as they held each other under the vast, indifferent sky of Harbor City. They knew the road ahead was complicated, but looking at the horizon, where the dark water met the lights of the city, they knew they would walk it together. The ashes were behind them. The future was theirs to build. Thank you so much for listening to You Married Him for Love, Mafia Boss asked, then kissed her and burned the wedding photo. I hope you enjoyed the emotional journey of Olivia and Luca as much as I enjoyed writing it. I would love to hear your thoughts on the ending. Did Luca make the right choice, giving up his empire? Let me know in the comments below. Also, please tell me where you are listening from. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories so you never miss a new episode. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, keep believing in love that is worth fighting for.